Well, good day, Aitois.
Good day, Ike.
Excellent. Is there a think there's a delay, but we're gonna have to roll with the punches. Build the airplane as we fly it. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. So, good day, good day, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my channel. This is Ike, and this is the inaugural, the first conversation with a live interlocutor that we are having on this channel. And I'm excited about it. The overall criteria for conversations in this channel is basically I like to have conversations with people that I find interesting, people that I just want to have a conversation with, okay? So that'll be the through line, basically things that I'm interested in, people I'm interested in. And there's a quote by Tom Wolfe, American author, that says that every individual has at least one novel in them. Now, they may not be a good writer, okay? But if the story of their life could be transcribed in a nice way, and obviously you're talking about a full lived life, then there are many interesting things to be gleaned from every individual. Today, in particular, we are talking about brothers that are out there on their stride, doing their thing, brothers in the C-suite, if you will. And we're talking to Aitois, aka Nuugame. He is the president of American Heritage University of Southern California, and also the head of admissions for the law school, correct?
That's correct.
Good. So let's get right into it. By way of getting started, how about you help us understand whom Aitois was at 6, 7, 8 years old, whom you were coming up, what aspirations you had for yourself. Did you see yourself being the president of a university? Did you have any aspirations whatsoever? How did that differ from, I know that's a broad question, but help us understand whom you were back then vis-a-vis whom you are now. In other words, kind of looking backwards.
Okay, thanks, Ike. First of all, I just want to say I'm honored to be on the show. I think Ike is a phenomenal individual with varying talents from music to speaking and performance. So it's definitely an honor to be here. So to your first question, when I think back to being 6 years old, I was a skinny kid growing up in Nigeria. My parents I was born here and then taken back to live in Nigeria because my parents felt it was necessary to know where I came from. So I had the privilege of doing that. So as a 6-year-old kid, I was primarily focused on just being a kid. I played a lot and I did all of the hide and seek, the Tom and Jerry plays, climbing trees and getting fruits directly from the tree, which is something a lot of people don't know what that feels like, to climb up a tree and get the fruit directly. So growing up in Nigeria, I just was focused on being a creative. What I mean is just playing around and I like touching things a lot. All I saw myself doing was just creating, right? So that's pretty much how it all started.
Gotcha. So in terms of when did you start having any kinds of aspirations or plans or anything like that? Perhaps not at 6 years old, but do you at any point start switching from I just want to be or I'm just creating and being as a child to having some kind of a structure or a plan to your life?
Yes, I think it started when I was 12. I remember specifically at the age of 12 thinking, I remember we grew up close to a university and I would see university students and I would think, wow, how am I going to learn how to, be in college? How am I going to learn this stuff? And I remember always thinking about what I was going to be when I was older. And the transition started becoming of age when I was about, I think I was 16. And actually at the age of 15. And my mom still has a letter. My mom and my dad had relocated back to the United States and were preparing for us to come back. So I remember writing a letter at the age of 15. It was a 2-page letter. Back then, there was no AOL, there was no text, there was none of that stuff. So everything was written down. I remember writing a letter to my mom where I said, as soon as I get back to the States, I was going to get a job. I was going to, start doing this and start doing that. And the letter was very specific. And my mom still recalls till this day some of the things that I said in that letter that I've all checked off. And as soon as I came back to the States at age 16, I started to, of course, got a regular job, and really started to, and that's where my mind started looking at the future in terms of wanting to be something, wanting to be not just, I mean, there was never a moment where I felt that I needed to be anything else but successful, because I just had this drive that was just, I have to be something. And I'm sure as we go on, I could talk a little bit more about that. But that's, I think it's at the age of 16 is where I really started putting the clamps on having a future that was meaningful and useful
Hmm.
to myself and my family.
Gotcha, gotcha. So if we fast forward all the way to your current position in your official capacity as president of American Heritage University, Southern California, is you guys are not just an online university, right? You also have physical space for classes, or what exactly is the construct there?
Well, in our current capacity, we can, per our license, go for a classroom environment, but the vision has always been to be ready for the future. That's why it's interesting to see everyone scrambling, what everyone is calling the traditional brick and mortar schools, scrambling to join us on the online space. To some degree, it's like we we saw this coming. We were prepared for the future. So our current capacity will allow for a classroom environment, but I had, since being the president and taking over, I've been preaching having an online presence. So we're right at home with what's going on right now, and everything that we want to do for the future moving forward has been primarily online. So we feel right at home right now with the current pandemic.
Gotcha. So what's a day to day like? We have audience right now listening, and they're maybe wondering, okay, what is the day to day life look like for the president of a university, president of American Heritage University? Yeah, it's a rather trivial and perhaps cheesy cliche question about this.
Right.
Well, so do you do on a daily basis? But hey, it's an access point, a way to get in. So what does your day to day life look like?
Well, let me say this: as you climb higher in the ranks of a company or a business or any entity, your day to day become more generalized, right? So my typical day to day varies on the time of year and what's going on in the school. So, for example, my day in the office today, I made sure that all of our compliance pieces, meaning for the university, American Heritage University of Southern California, I make sure all the compliance pieces are current, up to date on the website. I make sure that the catalog is reading 2020. You'll be surprised. I make sure that that's happening. Also, I oversee the law school as the president, but in the law school, I really wear the admissions director of admissions role. But as a president, my job is to make sure that our image on the website is on, because that's where we exist as a university, is on the internet. So I
Hmm.
make sure that that's intact. I make sure that everything is current. I make sure that our affiliates, our international affiliates, are up to date as far as what's going on, if we made any changes. I make sure that financially we are strong and able to pay our employees and take care of our overhead. I make, sometimes, like today, I made a little Excel sheet, just understanding where we stand, our emission numbers, what our emission numbers were last year in comparison to this year, and just seeing if the pandemic has affected our numbers, and really just preparing for what I'm going to say in the next meeting. So the day-to-day life of a president is just worrying about the business like a parent would worry about their child. If
Ah.
I had to put it in a glib and dry way, it would just be worrying about what your kids are going to have, or your children are going to have for the day, and I have to worry about the business from that perspective.
Gotcha. So you mentioned things about finances, online presence, accreditation, and things like that, if I heard correctly. And how
Right.
about are you involved with the marketing aspect of this, or marketing and slash sales? Or are you involved with that department, or how does that department work? I'm kind of curious about that.
That's a good question. So what happens on the executive or administrative level, you're still selling. but now you're selling with other presidents or other affiliates in another school. Right now we have an affiliate in Bangalore in India, and we have a memorandum of understanding where their students and their school and our school have a partnership where they can send their students to our school using our curriculum, but they do all the teaching and they do all the paperwork as far as getting the students in class. And when they're done, we take the transcripts and we evaluate them, and then they can hang on the wall that they got their degree, their bachelor's or master's from American Heritage University. So the selling process never ends. It's just now it's on a higher scale. So we have contracts sometimes that will produce anywhere from $200,000 a year, or sometimes more, sometimes less, just depending. Just like any business, we have our peak seasons, we have our low seasons. Now, right now, obviously, with the pandemic, we've been hit having a lesser students, fewer students in our enrollment. So I'm still selling and still pitching the program, still looking at our learning outcomes and seeing how relevant they are to what's going on. For example, earlier this year, we restructured our curriculum to focus on critical thinking. Because I did some research with my colleagues, and we have found critical thinking to be the obvious magic that takes place in education. So we restructured our learning outcomes to revolve around critical thinking and adopting what seems to be the new trend, and how what we are noticing as what's the word I'm looking for here? Social media CEOs or online CEOs. So we're looking at our curriculum and how it can appeal to that audience while maintaining the tradition of a standard university. So there's still selling involved. There's still marketing involved. So I look at the website. For example, if you visit our website, which is, I'm sure we can provide the links somewhere on this video, I had to change the image on the first, change the models on the first page to embody a variety of races. So on there, you'll see Black, African American with a Caucasian with an Indian. Now the Indian was key because I wanted to make sure our affiliated, our students, abroad can see some Indian on the website. So these are little subtle jabs that I have to take as a president. So I have to have a broad understanding of those perspectives so that when I look at our product, which is really our website, I can say that if an Asian person rather is on the website, they can see themselves there. If someone, from, an African American can see themselves there, or of course, a Caucasian can see themselves there as well.
Gotcha. Do you enjoy selling?
I do. I do. I enjoy the process of bringing down walls, because to some degree we all walk around with walls, whether it's in our traditional beliefs, religious beliefs, and the process of bringing down those walls is something I find very enticing to do as often as possible.
I see. I've never heard it put that way. I'm taking notes over here. Bringing down walls. Yeah, I like that one. I like that one. So I know that you rose through the ranks to your current position.
Yes.
Where did you start? What was your first job like? Now, you mentioned that as you rise up, your day-to-day, your role requires more generality. You get more generalized and so on and so forth. So take us back to the particulars and the first place you started. Yeah.
Okay. My first job was at KFC. I mean, I started as a cook. I'm proud to say it now, but earlier in my life, I was embarrassed. I started as a cook, and I want to share a funny story. I walked in with my pants ironed with creases. I had my shoes polished, and I had my shirt done. I sprayed some cologne. I walked in there and I said, I'm ready to work. And they took me to the kitchen. I was like, oh, okay. So I guess I'm in the kitchen. And they're showing me how to make chicken, and some of the powder got in my shirt. And I specifically remember just dusting it off. And the manager looked at me and laughed and goes, I don't know if you're ready for this job. And I thought, okay. And that was where I realized that working is hard. But I grew up with a mentality of, keep going until you win. So I just kept doing it. And then from KFC, I went to work at El Pollo Loco, and this time around I was in a drive-through, and then I started working for Hollywood Video. Some of you young folks might not know what that is, but it's a place where you actually rent DVDs and video cassettes. And I worked at Hollywood Video, and then from Hollywood Video I went to Walmart, and then from Walmart to Microsoft. I was working for Microsoft. That was a fun job. So my job as a Microsoft rep was to Fry's and Comp USA at the time, and Best Buy, and pretty much just roam around the computer section. And I had to introduce the Microsoft Media Center at the time. And then from Microsoft, I decided I was going to start my own business, which I still have going by the side. It's called NGP Consults. And then, because I learned so much from all those jobs, I learned something from KFC. You learn from every experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from after leaving the consulting, I was running my own while I was in consulting, I met who's now my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend. And she said, why don't you just, have another part-time job? Why not get the best of both worlds? I thought, So I went into sales of Verizon Communications, and I was a phenomenal sales rep. And while working in the sales job, my dad, who's the founder of American Heritage University, would say, hey, you need to leave that 9 to 5 and come work with me, and we could, change the world, right? Of course, I was young at the time. I was enjoying the thrills of selling and the incentives of selling. And in 2013, I just kind of decided to listen to him, and best decision ever, because I experienced a new kind of freedom, just being able to work with your own schedule and all that. So I came over 2013 as the IT guy. I got my bachelor's in computer science. So I was the IT guy. And when I came in, I realized that they needed a lot of help. So I have one rule, and my rule is find out what everyone's uncomfortable doing and be the master of it. And what I've discovered with that mentality, it makes you indispensable to anyone that's around you. So when I realized that they were struggling trying to get everything to work under technology, so I said, okay. So I started to structure the program around my technology knowledge. It just so happened at the time I was doing my master's in business administration, so I was able to bring some of that business knowledge into it, and I started helping with the technology, and then I started migrating the forms into one easy to access place, and then I started to help bring the program and find out what are the learning outcomes. How does someone, I asked a question, I'll never forget this. I says, what if someone walks in here right now and says, I want to start the program? What are they supposed to do? And everyone gave me a blank stare, and I thought, okay, we need to fix that. So I brought some organization in, and then I went from the IT guy to the public relations person, because everyone agreed that I was a great speaker and that I had presence. And then it went from marketing to, went from public speaking to marketing, because my MBA my emphasis was in marketing. So, and then I started marketing, and I started by using my IT skills to restructure the website, and I put the marketing perspective into it. And then from there, it was like, hey, we need you to do a little bit more administrative stuff. And then from the marketing, I got promoted to the vice president. And as from the vice president, it pretty much just led to, why don't you just be in charge, because you seem to know everything. So that's how I got here.
Interesting. Yeah. So a couple of themes there. You mentioned that you learn from every job, starting from KFC, Walmart, and all that stuff, right? And then even at this particular location, you learned many things, and also you made yourself indispensable. That's a very good point. That fellas listen out there, you want to do the thing that no one else wants to do. And sales, by the way, and the reason why sales jobs are so highly paid is because people don't want to talk to people, right? People don't want to. Yeah, I mean, the hardest sales job is door to door. So if you're wondering what sales is about, just imagine, okay, you got this neighborhood, you're the AT&T guy, you got to go flip all these, whatever the competitor is, to AT&T, and you just knock on the door and you take it. So basically, you want to do what no one else wants to do, okay? And the fact is, and would you agree with this, that it is a skill that you can learn, right? So it could be something like sales, for example, right? Something that's difficult like that. It's not a question of, oh, well, I'm not a natural. You can learn that skill. You can put your nose down and learn to do things that other people don't want to do. What would you say about that?
That's correct. Yeah, one of the things that I've learned is I've learned to what I'm gonna allow me to use an example. Um, we all like cake, okay? Or let me broaden that and say everyone likes baked goods. But let us just imagine that every baked product has emotions and can express what they're feeling. At the baking phase is probably the most frustrating part for any baked product, right? But we
Mm,
all know that the outcome, once any baked product goes through the process of being baked, the outcome is a highly desired snack, whether it's a muffin, cake, cookie, a bread, whatever, right? So I look at the learning process of anything as being baked. So
mm,
what happens to me is that when I'm in the baking process, I have learned to be comfortable. So I'm sitting in that process and I just keep telling myself, you're about to be cake. You're about to be cake, right? So in having that mentality, I've learned to enjoy the learning process. And when you can enjoy the learning process, then you can A, learn anything that people don't want to learn. B, you're not as exhausted or stressed out, for lack of a better word,
mm.
when you're in the baking process. But the best part about it, you can taste the cake while you're in the baking process because you know that you're just being baked.
Mm,
So, for example, going back to a specific, when I came into school, having all this technology background, I knew nothing about curriculum. I knew nothing about curriculum development. I knew nothing about turning a face-to-face curriculum into an online curriculum, but I was willing to learn. So I would watch YouTube videos, I would read books, I would watch seminars, and I started to learn a very interesting theory called Bloom's taxonomy. And the idea of Bloom's taxonomy, it says that we learn in three ways: by introduction to knowledge, development of knowledge, and mastery of knowledge, right? So I started to take the curriculum and I would look at the learning outcomes and I would look for words that are identifying with an introduction. So I would take that and say, this looks like it's an introductory course. And when it's a development of knowledge, then I would put it, this is more of a mid course.
mm,
And things like your final exam or your senior project or a capstone course, that would be more of a mastery. So in exposing myself to that type of knowledge, I started to grow. And what I noticed started happening is I started to surpass everyone, not intentionally, but they started to recognize that I knew something I didn't know, and I was comfortable making them. I made them comfortable being around me to not make them feel like I was overthrowing you, but I was really there to help you. And that's what my sales background taught me. I was able
mm,
to sell myself to say, hey, look, let me show you how we can make this a little bit easier. So they didn't feel intimidated. I still refer to them as doctors, Dr. Deb, Dr. Ray. I would
mm,
still greet them with the utmost respect, but I was still the president, if that makes sense. So,
mm.
um, so one of the things I do want to add, what did I learn from something like KFC? I learned to not stand around. So when we're done frying the chicken, we jump into the dishes, start doing the dishes. So I learned to make use of my time. What did I learn from
Mm.
Hollywood Video? I learned to organize stuff because you have to get the movies at the end of the day. You got to organize these videos. You got to put them where they belong in alphabetical order. What did I learn from El Pollo Loco? I learned that people are hungry and they like ice cream when it's cold. And why is that important? Is that sometimes you think that because it's hot, we're gonna sell more ice cream, but no, we sell more ice cream when it's cold. So I learned that sometimes it's never gonna go with your understanding, but just go with the flow, right? So Microsoft, I learned to speak more to people. In my sales job, I learned to put down the walls. And all of that takes you to places like where I'm at, where I could sit in my office and have a very light day because I've paid my dues.
Nice, nice, nice. So I'm becoming cake. Yeah, I like that one. I like that one. So yeah, you mentioned that
Right.
while you were while you had your private business, which you what's the name of your business?
It's called NGP Consults. And that's really just Nuugame Productions, which, well, we could talk more about that later, but NGP Consults is my consulting firm. And the sole purpose of that, my firm, and has been since 2004, is to help small businesses bring their brand, their products, their services to the world through technology, whether it's giving them a website, creating a brand identity, and of course, integrating some level of marketing and sales.
Gotcha. Entropy Consults. And you met your wife, you with your fiance then, and your wife now. So you're a married man.
Yes.
Any kids?
Yes. Happily married for 12 years now with 3 boys. A 10, an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And what's interesting actually was my wife's piano teacher.
Mm.
That's how I met my wife. I was her piano teacher, and we started liking each other.
You hear that, fellas? That's good game right there. Tutors, yeah, tutors always, yeah, tutors win. But if there's
That's right.
now, if there's anything you can say, or what lessons have you gleaned from this 12 years of marriage, 11-year-old and a 3-year-old on the other end, and perhaps I could frame this way, another cheesy, cliche type of question. If there was something that you could tell your younger self about marriage and relationships, what would that be?
Wow, that's an interesting question. If I could tell my younger self, I would say be more patient. And I would say, wow, I wasn't prepared for that question. I would say be more patient and understand that when you're getting married, you're marrying into a family. You're not just marrying your spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell my younger self, be ready to marry her mom, her dad, her brothers, her culture, her mindsets, her perspectives, traditions, a lot of stuff that when we're young and in love, we don't care about that stuff. But when you get married, especially being as married as long as I have, 12 years and counting, those are some of the things that you have to deal with. So I would tell my younger self, be more patient. And also, you're going to marry all these people, and you're marrying their problems, both good and bad, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
marrying their history, and that's a lot to process, especially when you're unprepared. So, but if I knew that back now, I would say, okay, you got to learn her family and get used to them, because they're going to come in completely different always from yours.
Hmm. What?
They're going to bring something that you are not prepared for.
What would you say then are the benefits of being married? Because there, I think that question is rather self-explanatory, because marriage is a choice, right? And you hear a lot of things these days about, oh, well, divorce
Right.
rates are high and this, that, and the other. And you mentioned you're marrying into the family, and there's good sides and there's bad sides to that. So let's talk about the good side, both in terms of being married, being
Right.
a family man, and also uniting these two families. What are the good sides that you've seen in your particular life, plus generally speaking, plus reflecting backwards? What would you say about that?
Okay. The for me personally, the most powerful, the key benefit with being married is the weight of being responsible for the well-being of others, because it gives you a supernatural drive that you cannot have unless you're married.
Hmm.
For example, I have 3 boys, and having 3 boys has made me a better man, because I want them to be exposed to concepts, mindsets, thinking in ways that I wasn't exposed to. So it makes me a better man, because I want them to see what a good man is like. So
Hmm.
it governs what I watch, what I listen to, even the tone and the volume of my voice. It governs my temperament, because I constantly have to reflect at them that I want them to be difference makers in the society. So as a result, whatever it is that they're doing, however it is that whatever it is that they're doing, whatever it is they're involved in, I make sure that I'm giving them the best opportunity to be completely successful at it by introducing the right mindsets. For example, if you go to any one of my children and you talk to them and you say, tell me about practice, they will say that practice makes you better. And if you ask them why, they would say that if you repeat something multiple times, you're going to get better at it. If you ask any of my boys, even maybe not my 3-year-old, but the two older ones, the 11-year-old and 8-year-old, you say, is it better to own a house or a car? They'll tell you it's better to own a house. If you ask them why, because a house is an asset that does not depreciate, but appreciates. So those kind of little things, I feel very honored every day that I wake up that I can make a difference in the minds of these young men, that they would grow into a society where that's primarily either missing or fading away, that they're growing up with these mindsets. Now, talking about the good of marriage, when marriage is done right, you have a partner that primarily looks out for your best interest in everything that you do. Let me say that again. When marriage is done right, you have another human being that devotes themselves to you and your well-being in every aspect of your life, whether it's your job, whether it's your psychological needs, your financial needs, your spiritual needs, your intimate needs, everything that you need. When marriage is done right, you have the next best thing to you. Because what people forget is, let's just assume that the average person gets married at 35. It's just an assumption.
The
And
average man.
if you ask everyone, how long do you plan? Right, the average man, right? If you ask anyone, how long do you want to live? Maybe some will say 75, 80, 90. So let's just do some basic math. If you say I want to live till I'm 80 and you subtract 35 from 80, if my math serves me right, that's 45 years. So you are spending 45 years of your life, which is more time in your life, with someone. So that's a big deal, right? So that means that if it's done right, you're ensuring that 45 years of the rest of your life, you're ensuring for decency and care and all these things that come along with that. Second thing is, marriage is the only entity where you get the certificate first and you have to spend the rest of your life taking the course, right? They give you a marriage certificate, right? And then you have to go figure. But what makes marriage what makes it special is, especially when it's done right, is it's a renewal of those benefits every day. Again, when the mindset is right, my wife gives me everything I need as a man, as a person, as a father, as a husband, and it never runs out. Sometimes you can go on a cruise, it's a 7-day cruise and it's over. Sometimes you can watch a movie, it's a fantastic movie, and it's over at a time. Sometimes you're writing a song, or you're in a studio session, you're making a sale. They all have expiration dates. But marriage is the only thing that you say, for better or worse, till death do us part. So that's a huge commitment to make to another person. But when it's done right, the benefits are endless, because every day you enjoy those benefits every single day. I could go on and on, but the good of marriage is really, in summary, is creating other beings that you can, bring into the world and give them the best opportunity of being successful, and having a partner that's out for your best interest in every facet and aspect of your life when done right. So I could go on and on, but I think that's a box summary I could put on it.
That's very nice. I like the first thing you mentioned there was being responsible for others gives you extraordinary drive. You had already mentioned that, you had mentioned that you were driven. You wrote that letter to your mom when you were 15, 16 years old, and so on and so forth. And I think that I definitely understand what you're saying, because even with that drive, right, that you already did have, there is another level, there's another gear that you never quite get until you are responsible for other people. And the word responsible also, especially for men, I think that a man is not seen as responsible, because in fact he is not, without being coupled. And I heard the beginnings of this particular story, or this picture, and give a shout out to to Kevin Samuels for this particular story. He was saying that, imagine yourself in the middle of a desert, okay? It's nighttime, and there is a horde of horses coming at you, people on horseback. and there's about 150 of them, and they're all men, all single men. End scene. Now, another scene, same desert, nighttime, horde of horses coming at you, 150 people, but there's grandma, there's grandpa, there's newborn babies, there's newlyweds, there's women, this, that, and the other. In what scene are you going to feel more comfortable? Right? I think the answer is obvious, right? The scene with all men, you'll be like, oh shit, right? Like, well, what's going on here? And as men, we know this to be true. We are marauders, okay? We're crazy. We're about glory and that kind of thing. We're not about nesting and so on and so forth, okay? And it's fine. That's the way we should be. We should be marauding glory seekers and for Sparta, right? That's what we're about.
Right.
However, no one is going to trust you or hand you the keys to the kingdom or place you in the C-suite of your company, right? If you are a marauding band of horse riding in the middle of the desert, which an uncoupled man is. And whether from the thought experiment that we just did, or if we're honest with ourselves as men, we know that's what we are. That's what, in fact, makes us good men, is because we are that beast. We're savages, right? So I think it's what you mentioned there is rather important, being responsible. So to kind of land the plane here, if you will, I know that you have other interests, right? You've mentioned it within this conversation so far. You mentioned yes, NGP, right? Which you said is Nuugame Productions, and also NGP Consultants has this other arm to it. But you've mentioned writing songs and being in the studio, right? And by the way, which I also know that, well, for audience out there, Aitwa right here is one of the best producers out there, hands down. And I don't mean one of the best producers I know. I mean one of the best producers out there, hands down. And I can judge. I know a thing or two about music, okay? I know a thing or two about music. I'm more on the writer, singer, songwriter, performer side of things, but this is one of the best producers out there. So I have a question for you. Like, what kind of music do you like? Obviously, anyone who is involved in music is just, you know, the tastes are varied. We can it's not genre specific. So I'm not asking about genres, okay? I'm asking about, is there a particular theme to something that moves you? Is it within the melody, the rhythm? Is it something that has to do with the emotional response? And also, does this inform the kind of music that you create?
Yes. Wow. Talking about my music side. Thank you for all the compliments. I mean, I'm honored to hear that because I started just like any other kid, producer making music. I like music that I think. Okay, first of all, when I listen to what's going on and you look at the type of creators we have now, they are missing some of the elements that we that started producing back in the 90s have. And that's understanding the type of sounds and how sounds interact with one another. My favorite producer of all time, Dr. Dre, is a big influence on me. And I'm gonna share something with you. Listen to any Dr. Dre song, any song that's produced by Dr. Dre. There's always a hit and a stop. So if you take so I say that because Dr. Dre understands that, and that's what I like in music as well. So what I like when music gives you a feeling. I like when you hear a song and there are no words on it, and you play it for artist A, and you say, "What do you want to talk about?" He says, "The sunset's cruising in Los." You know, I picture a drop top. I'm in a drop top with the sunset. I'm cruising down Sunset Boulevard, right? And then I take it to another artist. He says, "This sounds like a Cali song, like we're in the beach." And I take it to 3, 4, 5 more artists, and they give me a scenario of cruising. To me, that's real music because I've created a feeling that's consistent with every artist. So for me, music has to create a feeling that can be transmitted to every listener in consistency. So it shouldn't be that artist one says that song made me sad, artist two said that song made me happy, and artist three said that song made me sing about love. But it should be that artists A through J, just using 10 just for the fun of it, they all hear that this made me feel like it was a song that, you know, needs to be, you know, sunset in LA. So in terms of my influence, going back to that, Dr. Dre, listen to any Dr. Dre song. There's always a kick, and a second or two goes by, and then there's a bass. And then when there's a bass, there's always another hit. Let's just take a song like one of his more popular songs, the song called Steel. So it goes, da, da. Guess what happened right there? Stopped. And then, da, da, and then stops. Da, da. Your brain can entertain that song for hours, right? Now let's take another song that actually made it to the Guinness Book of Records. The song "In the Club" with 50 Cent. So it goes, bum bum, stops, bum bum, bum bum, bum bum. That stop is vital because it creates a bounce in the song. It creates an energy. It makes you want to keep going. It's like a picture frame that's a bit crooked. You always want to make it straight, right? So when that bum bum, you know, your brain wants to go, oh, and then it comes back, bum 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 bum, and then you go back. And so so Dr. Dre is a producer that does that. I have other influences. I like DJ Quick. I like Shep Crawford. I like Battle Cat. These are producers that have taken different elements in music and brought them together. But Dr. Dre is one that I studied a lot. In some of my material, I've been accused of sounding like him, you know. But hey, they say a copy is a form of, you know, flattery. There's a quote out there for that. But so in a musical world, I rely a lot on feelings. Sometimes I can go 3 months without making a song because it didn't come to me as a feeling. I just don't sit behind the drum machine and start pushing buttons or anything. So I have to let the song come to me. So a lot of times when I'm feeling happy, I make a happy song. If I'm feeling sad, I make a sad song. If I'm upset, I make an angry song. So on the musical level, it's just really going on feeling and making sure that the instruments are creating enough chaos or no chaos so we can create chaos with the listener, or we can bring chaos to their environment. So the music has to influence the listener. It has to influence the listener's emotion in the absence of any lyrical content or melodic content. So that's my little science on music.
I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense to me. If I could add to that, basically, to talk about music in general, and then we'll talk about, you know, there's a whole thing about art there that you've kind of stated. Well, music is the only art form that goes directly to the emotions, right? So if you read a book, poetry, for example, you have to first read the words, interpret the symbols, get the whatever, and then you feel a certain way, right? If it's good. It always ends up with the feeling, right? If it's good. Painting, you have to get the visuals in, or sculpture is still visual and tactile and so on and so forth. There's perception and interpretation, and then an emotional. But music is the only one that goes directly in your ear and just goes to your emotions, especially just instrumental music, right? No words, no words, right? Just, there is no symbols or language or anything like that. And guess what? It then paints images in your head. Like you said, they say they picture themselves cruising. They're at the beach and so on and so forth. So they hear a sound, it goes directly to their heart, if you will, and then images come out, right? And most other art forms are the reverse. You see the image, or through the words see the image, and then you go to the heart. But the music goes directly to the heart and then elicits the visuals, the image and the talk in your head. So that's very interesting. And as a general principle in terms of art, I've always had this idea that art is something that should be sufficiently general. And I think that's part of what you said, in the sense that it should elicit the same thing from these different people, but without telling them, right? You didn't say, hey, this is my beach song, this is my sunset song, listen to it, right?
Right.
It should elicit the sunset and the
Right.
beach from them. So if you're
Correct.
trying to, if we talk about the visual arts, for example,
Hmm.
if the difference between a painting and a billboard, or the painting and marketing, the paintings and propaganda, right? So picture this, for example, you could have propaganda, which will clearly, I don't have to tell you that this is the propaganda image, because I'm going to juxtapose two images here. One is propaganda. There's a fist, bursting through some kind of rock or something, and it says, "We shall overcome," right? So it's, okay, got it. I
Right.
get your message here, or "We will overthrow the party," or something like that. But then if you can picture another, this one is a painting. Now this is more in the art land, because there's always that question of where does the line land between art and propaganda? And picture, if you will, a stormy night. This is a painting. As a stormy, dark situation. It's rainy and there's an airplane stuck in this storm, but there's a little patch of clear sky that the airplane is trying to escape through that storm, right? And you don't know if he'll make it
Right.
yet. You don't know if he's gonna make it. It's the still, like, he's
Right.
there, but he's aiming for that because the artist is giving you that
Right.
image, right? He's going for that. Now, this gives you an emotion of we
Right.
shall overcome, right? We will over that kind of a rise, right? But the
Right.
difference between the
Right.
propaganda piece and the art piece is, number one, it's not explicit, right? Where it just tells you, fist through wall, we shall overcome, we will overthrow the party, or something like that. But then the
Right.
most important one too is you elicit the participation of the audience. In other words, you can look at that painting year after year after year after year, and you will bring something different to it, depending on your experience, right? Depending on what's going on with you that day, that week, depending on what you're
That's right.
thinking about. But we shall overthrow the party. That's just dead. It's dead on arrival. It's you can't keep looking at that over and
That's
over
there.
again. We shall overthrow the party. So the real way to move people, and this applies to many things, right? When it comes to influencing people in general, because we talked about sales and so on and so forth, right? So you want to move more towards the art side of things than
Right.
the propaganda side of things. You want to inspire people. You want their imaginations to participate in the image rather than tell them, because you can, a communist can look at that picture of that airplane and be like, yes, we'll take down the capitalists or whatever. And a capitalist can look at it and be like, yes, my company will overcome, right? So it's general. Everybody brings what they want to it.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Universal.
universality, generality, participation of the audience in the story is what keeps it fresh. Is what keeps it going, and it's what makes it art. And that's why art lasts forever. And I think that even with popular music and also popular art,
That's right.
there's this kind of move towards the propaganda side of things. So let's make it explicit. Let's just tell you, and let's just give you what you want, that kind of a thing. But anyways, this has been a
Right.
great conversation. This has been a great conversation, sir, and I definitely thank you for your time. Once again,
Yes, absolutely.
this is Aitwa, aka Nuugame. He is the president of American Heritage University. He is also the director of admissions for the law school. We'll have links below for American Heritage University. And also, you can provide me with links for NGP consultants and whatever other links. And how about your social media handles? Where
Yes.
can people find you if you want to shout that out? And we'll also have the links.
Yeah. I'm on. If you go to LinkedIn, just look for my first name, Aitua, Aitua, and my last name, Ogamian. And also look for for Instagram is Nuugame Music. That's NUUGAME Music, NUUGAME Music. And I'm also on, if you go to Facebook, facebook.com/Nuugame Music, same thing. And you'll find me. And I'm also on iTunes. Go to iTunes, type in NUUGAME, which is my artist name, Nuugame, and you can listen to some of my music.
Excellent, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This was the inaugural, the first of many conversations that we'll be having on this channel, and also the first of other conversations that we'll be having with Aitwa and Nuugame as well. We just touched on one aspect of his life. I'm sure, as you can tell, the brother has different, he's a multi-varied a multi-layered type of individual. So there'll be many more conversations to come where we can touch on other subjects. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening, and we are out.